Coming up on UI7 News, the university reacts to the tragic death of Illinois wrestler Francis Edelin.
Later, the impacts of social media and its effect on society.
Also, local area residents gather together for the March for Our Lives campaign.
UI7 News starts now.
From the Richmond Journalism Teaching Studio at the University of Illinois campus, UI7 News, your U of I news source.
Hello, I'm Jian Kim.
And I'm Lena Marie, and this is your 5:30 edition of UI7 News. Countless people in the University of Illinois community are mourning the loss of one of their own tonight. Fighting Illini wrestler Francis Edelin was killed in a hit-and-run accident last week. State police say he was involved in a minor accident on Interstate 57. Police say Edelin left the scene to look for help when he was struck by a separate vehicle who fled the scene.
Tonight, members of the University of Illinois community are speaking out about the tragedy.
I saw it on Twitter, and we got a text, kind of a mass text, to all the athletes, just saying, this is what happened, and it kind of took me by shock, because I was, on spring break, and I'm, having a good time, and all of a sudden, that's kind of a really unfortunate thing to hear. And I didn't know him too well, but I was with some teammates that knew who he was, and kind of had a relationship with him, so it was tough.
I hope that this occasion, this event, is going to hopefully raise awareness about how cautious people have to be when driving.
Obviously, this is something that hits pretty close to home. As a student here, we don't really hear about these kinds of incidents much. I'm kind of curious to know what it was, if there was maybe something, maybe the driver was under the influence of something, or maybe he was texting while he was driving. That's obviously a possibility, and that obviously increases the risk of accidents.
Plenty of people, that were really close with him, that are, going to mourn, and it's going to be, a time where, people might have to seek, some counseling or anything. But I think in all, it'll bring us, closer, just not as, a team or just the wrestling team, but, everyone as a whole.
The university responds to the tragic death of the 21-year-old Illinois wrestler. Director of Athletics John Whitman says, "Our hearts are broken by the news of Francis Edelin's passing." He continues to say, "Our thoughts are with Francis's family and friends." Whitman expects that Illinois will come together as a family during this difficult time.
In response to mass shootings, students across the country are joining together to raise awareness for gun control. UI7's Olivia Schmidt has more on this growing tension between gun control advocates and Second Amendment supporters.
More! 50 miles more!
Students are taking a stand to end school shootings. On Saturday, more than 800 groups marched across the country and internationally to protest gun violence. This comes 5 weeks after the Parkland shooting. Across Champaign County, over 700 high school students and community members came together for the March for Our Lives event. Laura Bile attended the march and says it's important the community takes their grief and puts it into action.
I'm super jazzed by the movement and how far it's come, and saddened by the events that led up to this moment.
And for Laura, these school shootings hit close to home.
Well, I have children who are in school, and frankly who think about these things now, and my daughter shouldn't have to worry about her safety related to guns.
Bile says it's very frustrating that gun violence still seems to be a problem in our society.
We as a society seem to value killing things that can kill children rather than children themselves.
And while many of the marchers believe taking away guns could solve the issue, others say the solution isn't that simple.
You've got way too many guns to be trying to go after at this point. People will hide them. They are going to you're going to make criminals out of people who traditionally have never been criminals.
Cycle says he's not completely against gun laws, but says the ones in place aren't effective.
We have no problem with the idea of legislation to solve problems. A lot of problems with the legislation you see is they won't actually solve any of the problems that they're trying to address.
Cycle says to end these mass shootings, there needs to be a discussion from both sides.
It's a matter of people getting together, actually coming out, what is the problem we want to fix, and then how do we think we can address it.
In Champaign-Urbana, Olivia Schmidt, UI7 News.
Joining us now on set is Isaac Gorath from Urbana High School. He was one of the organizers for the march this past Saturday. Thanks for joining us, Isaac.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what motivated you to organize this march?
So kind of a lot of factors. So one thing is the school violence that's been happening throughout the country, and we wanted to show solidarity with movements that have been forming throughout the country, but then also kind of using this platform of school violence that has occurred and using that platform to talk about other gun violence that usually happens in our country that usually isn't talked about, specifically to like overproportionally to young Black men.
Okay. So what do you say to people who say that guns aren't the problem, it's the people?
I think to that I say, like, you can look at like many other countries throughout the world, and when you have regulations on guns, those numbers of shootings do go down. And while there are people responsible, by eliminating the guns, you eliminate what can be done and how much damage can be done. And I think that's really important.
How about if we say that we train certain people on how to handle these guns? What would you say to that?
Well, you see like many people trained, and like even if you're trained, these guns are still really dangerous. And there's a lot of examples of houses with parents who are totally trained in gun use, but then a toddler just gets a hold of the gun somehow because someone was careless, and everyone's careless, you know, like at some points, and the toddler gets the hold and then accidentally shoots themselves. And there's many cases of death like that. And so you really need to have more gun control.
Do you guys have any ideas of what alternatives you could have for protection?
I think that for alternatives for protection, by limiting the usage of guns, you kind of, there is less, if no one has these weapons, then the extent of crime is less severe.
Okay. So what can local community members do to help with this movement?
There's a lot of things, such as like calling your representatives, and also calling your representatives and asking them to help pass gun control legislation, and also supporting like marches and actions organized by local students, and then also calling Bruce Rauner and supporting the revote of the Guns Dealer Licensing Act.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Here are some gun statistics. According to CNN and BBC, Americans own the most guns per capita. In fact, 66% of U.S. gun owners have multiple firearms, and 40% of Americans live with a gun.
We are now joined in the studio with former Vice President of Gun Save Lives, Bare St Pierre. Thank you for joining us. So we've heard from multiple people throughout this newscast today that guns should be banned. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I think of a comedian who said, well, when did banning ever work in our country? You know, we banned alcohol in the 20s in this country and you couldn't find a drop, right? I don't think the problem is the banning. The problem is that we need to get a better control of what's going on with our society and fix where people are hurting rather than worrying about an inanimate object.
Okay. Some people say that there should be restrictions. Do you pose any alternatives or protection?
Well, I don't understand what they mean by the restrictions. We already have a background check system. It's run by our Federal Bureau of Investigation. You know, it's called the Nixus, you know, background check, and it literally, if you've committed a crime and they have it in their system, or you know, they have those things already in place. If you go to purchase a firearm, you have to fill out a 4473. You have to wait while they do the background check, and then once you're approved, then they allow you to come pick up the firearm. So people, when they talk about this universal background check, I'm like, well, what else are you trying to accomplish with the background check other than what's already happening? A lot of the times when there's a fault in the system, it's usually because somebody didn't do their job, more so than it is a issue with the person who's purchasing the firearm.
So how do you think that us as a nation should address these ongoing violences with guns?
Well, like what I was thinking was that what we need to do is we need to spend more time with our youth. We've created a culture where we have young men who don't have men in their lives to build into them, to help them become what it means to be a man. They don't know what that is. There's a purpose void in our young men today, and they wither or wander when it comes to their manhood. They don't have fathers at home, a lot of them, that have these issues with firearms. It's because there's no man in their life to help them grow into what it means to be a man. And they twist what manhood is based on either ideas with friends or what they see in movies and things like that, and they try to create a manhood that isn't really what manhood is about.
Okay, so then why do you think that guns should be legal, since you're telling me that guns aren't the problem?
Yeah. Well, it's our Second Amendment right. You know, when we look at history, we need to go back to history and find out what the original intent of the words that were written were. When we look at the idea of the Second Amendment, and the Supreme Court has already, made decisions on this, that it means the individual's right to have a firearm. The free state isn't referring to like the state of Illinois. It's talking about a state of mind, a free state, like, an idea. To have this idea of a free state, individuals need to have firearms to protect us from government and tyranny.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you
you
so much for joining us. Coming up after the break, UI7's Isaac Gorath has a story on the effects of social media on students. Also, we have the recap on some primary election results from last week.
What to expect when you're expecting a teenager.
Hey guys, today we're talking about how to wake up your teen, and this works literally every time.
Give kisses. Give kisses. Look. Give kisses. Give kisses. You heard how loud that was.
I know,
I heard that.
I heard. It wasn't you.
Yeah.
It was the...
Is that bacon?
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Bacon.
Families come in all sizes and shapes. Sometimes your friends are your family by choice, or sometimes you're just stuck with Uncle Charles. But what we know is that you want to protect the people that are close to you. But the flu can unravel everything. Your flu vaccine protects you and your family. No matter what draws your family together, protect yourself, protect your family. Everyone needs a flu vaccine.
Good morning, Illini.
Hey, good morning, Illini, and selamat pagi.
Good morning, Illini.
New numbers show roughly 88% of adults 18 to 29 use some type of social media. The numbers are part of a newly published Pew Research survey. Experts say those adults need to be aware of the risks involved with social media. UI7's Isaac Gorath has more.
Social media is growing like never before, and while sounds like these can bring positivity for some, it could also bring negativity for others. Christy Struck is a senior at the University of Illinois. She says that she thinks that some people use it in attempts to feel a certain way.
I think that it has a bunch of like social and like psychological negatives. People can kind of become addicted to it and like feel like they need social media to be like popular or cool or something like that.
Phones are obviously part of our everyday lives, but what makes them and social media so addicting? Studies show that social media can in fact be addicting and even cause withdrawal when people can't use it. It could also trigger some other health concerns such as sadness and a lower quality of life. Many of these are apparent in younger kids and teenagers. John Mahan is a father and priest in the Champaign-Urbana area. He says he feels like he should know more about social media and its effects.
I have 4 kids coming up, and it's like, how much should I have them be on electronics? How much should I have them?
Freshman students at the University of Illinois like Nicole June and Neela Krishnan like the conveniency of social media.
It's just like the speed aspect in so many like things. Like you get to learn fast and you get to learn things about others fast and you get to show yourself off fast.
However, these are some things that could still cause problems. Joseph Yoon is the leader for social media analytics at the University of Illinois. He sees both the positives and the negatives in social media.
I think at the end of the day, we're habitual beings and our daily life cycle is using technology.
Education on social media is one way Yoon says social media can be improved. In Champaign-Urbana, I'm Zach Barakat, UI7 News.
While students were on break last week, voters were turning out for the Illinois primary. One of the bigger races included for the primary for Attorney General in Illinois. Erica Harold won in the Republican race over Gary Grasso. Kwame Raoul will be up for election in November after winning for the Democratic side. Democratic incumbent Lisa Madigan won't seek re-election after holding the office since 2003. In the governor's race, current Governor Bruce Rauner edged out Gene Ives by less than 3 points in the Republican race. Billionaire J.B. Pritzker will be on the November ticket for the Democrats after earning more votes than the other 5 candidates for that side. The national midterm elections are November 6th.
Champaign County Clerk Gordy Holton says many highly contested races on both sides of the aisle affected the Champaign-Urbana community this primary election.
Locally, we had a county clerk primary on the Republican side and also a sheriff primary on the Republican side, so there was lots of interest in voting among Republicans. On the Democratic side, though, we had turnout that was about twice what we would normally see. And I think that's primarily because of hotly contested races for governor, attorney general, and in the 13th congressional district, which includes most of Champaign-Urbana. I will be curious to see how much like sort of the national political climate will impact the 13th congressional district versus sort of the fundamentals or what is going on the ground. I'd also point out that the 13th district is not homogenous. So Champaign-Urbana, for example, is very heavily Democratic these days, especially at the federal level, but the rest of that district has moved more towards the Republican Party since Donald Trump's election. And because we live in Champaign-Urbana, sometimes we don't feel that. And so it would be really interesting to see how the different geographic regions of that congressional district impact the fall result.
Looking ahead to the general election, Holton said his office will prepare for record-breaking turnout in November, yet it is still too early to predict voter turnout.
The University of Illinois and its relationship with the chief have been ongoing for the past 10 years since its removal. The University of Illinois is filing a federal lawsuit against a Chicago Park Ridge man for using its trademark to create orange and blue t-shirts that say, "Make Illinois Great Again." UIUC says the shirts violate the trademark of Illinois and the chief. The shirt also uses the copyrighted image of Chief Illiniwek, which was commissioned from 2007. The university is asking the court to prohibit him from selling the merchandise.
Coming up after the break, UI7's Evan Kahn takes a look at our weather forecast. Then, Samantha McQueen joins us for the latest on sports. Stay with us.
Yeah,
Don't ignore the subtext. It's on us to intervene in sexual assault.
because we can. Take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
For a look at weather, here's Evan Kahn.
Good evening. Champaign-Urbana had a cloudy day across the area, a little warmer than it was over the weekend, getting those snowstorms, getting those out of the way with the rain. But it looks like that rain's probably going to stick around for a while. Let's just go ahead and look at some local temperatures. A lot of the same for the area. A little cooler indicator at 47, 48 right now here in Champaign-Urbana. Warmer a little bit to the north in Rantoul at 50, and about the same in Bloomington-Normal at 48. Some Midwest temperatures a little warmer to the south in Louisville at 60 degrees and 56 in Paducah. About the same in Indianapolis at 51, and over in Des Moines at 51 as well. Some of the national temperatures got some warmer weather in the west and southwest, 70 degrees in Phoenix and Los Angeles. Cooler up in Seattle at 48 and 44 in Denver. Nice weather down in Miami for opening day for the Cubs and the Marlins tomorrow, 76 degrees there. And about the same up in the Northeast, 51 degrees for Boston. Going ahead and looking at tonight's forecast, about the same, mostly cloudy, might get some showers in there as well with a low of 45. Tomorrow, the occasional showers, cloudy skies, going to be windy, get gusts up to 20 miles an hour. Be careful out there with your umbrellas. And as we go ahead and look at the rest of the weekend's weather forecast, clearing up the rain on Friday with a high of 52. The rain's back on Saturday, highs near 54, and then we lose the rain again for Sunday, but the temperatures are going to fall, high only of 42.
Thanks, Evan.
Yeah, not a problem.
Now we welcome Sammy McQueen with sports.
Thanks, guys. Coming up in sports, we'll talk about March Madness as teams head to San Antonio for the Final Four. Plus, more on Illinois baseball and how their junior first baseman is making national headlines.
Everything starts out small. The things that hurt us, they all start from somewhere. The words we say, the things we do, they can grow into something else. What was small and innocent can become big and sometimes scary. All it takes is one comment, one picture, one video for something to catch fire. But a big problem doesn't need a big response. Not at first. Even if we don't know what to say, the eye emoji can be that first step we take. Let's all pledge to take that first small step together and change the world in a big way. I'm a witness, and so are you.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right?
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
So we were walking to school.
I started thinking about lunch. Mom packed me turkey and cheese.
She's
I really want
smart.
cheese pizza.
Sometimes her mind wanders.
We should have a sleepover.
I remember saying, Laura?
I think I heard Mom say something.
The sign says don't walk.
Sometimes it's so overwhelming.
I really hope she doesn't
I
have
really
another
hope I
bad
don't
day
have
at
another
school
bad day at
today.
school today.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. Go to understood.org, a free online resource with support and tools to help your child thrive.
March is almost over, but the madness is just getting started as the Final Four of the men's NCAA basketball national tournament has been set. On the west side of the tournament, Michigan defeated the Florida State Seminoles. In the East, #1 ranked Villanova steamrolled Texas Tech. However, it would be the first remaining 2 games of the Elite Eight that stole the spotlight last weekend. In the Midwest, the #1 seeded Kansas Jayhawks faced off against Duke and arguably had the most dramatic ending of the Elite Eight. In the final 30 seconds of the second half, the Jayhawks tied the game with a 3 from senior guard Svi Mikhailuk, sending the game into overtime. Both teams exchanged baskets in the extra period, but Kansas squeaked by in the final 2 minutes, winning 85-81. In the South, the Loyola Chicago Ramblers were trying to keep their Cinderella streak alive against the Kansas State Wildcats. It was senior guard Ben Richardson's time to shine as he put up a career high of 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. He was also 6 for 7 behind the arc. The Ramblers kept their foot on the gas from the opening tip and ran away with a 78-62 victory. They're headed to their first Final Four appearance since 1963. Not only were the #11 ranked Ramblers excelling on the court, they were doing it off the court as well with the rising stardom of team chaplain Sister Jean Dolores Schmidt. The 98-year-old nun has served as one of the inspirational leaders of the team all season long and has gained celebrity status as a result. She even has her own bobblehead. Not only that, but it is one of the fastest selling products of its kind, according to the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum. Over 5,000 of her bobbleheads have sold as of Monday morning, and that number is sure to increase as her popularity does the same. Loyola's next test comes in the form of the #3 Wolverines this Saturday. Later that night, 2 #1 seeds, Villanova and Kansas, battle it out for a trip to the national championship. The Fighting Illini did not qualify for the national tournament, but made headlines for other reasons earlier this week. Following Mark Smith's transfer from the program, redshirt junior Michael Finke and sophomore guard T-John Lucas are also leaving Champaign-Urbana. In head coach Brad Underwood's first year as head coach, 4 players have left the university before their eligibility expired. Redshirt junior LaRon Black declared that he was turning pro earlier this month. In other Illini athletic news, the Illini baseball team is on a tear as of late, winning 5 games in a row. Evan Kahn has more on how the orange and blue are getting it done on the diamond.
The Fighting Illini have won 7 of their 8 games since sneaking into the top 25 2 weeks ago and hold a 15-5 record overall as conference play picks up around the Big Ten. After missing the Big Ten tournament 2 straight years, first baseman Brent Spillane says it's impressive to see players reaching their potential this season.
It's really cool. I mean, coming in here, we had, my freshman year had a lot of expectations, and we obviously did me in the past 2 years, and it's really been cool to see the progress, not individually, but as a team.
While the team is making strides, Spillane is turning himself into one of the most feared hitters in the Big Ten. He currently leads the Big Ten in many offensive categories, including average, on-base percentage, and home runs.
Both Spillane and head coach Dan Hartlib say time was a major factor in leading to his breakout season.
Yeah, you always hear people talk about slowing the game down. When you're young, inexperienced, everything just seems to be quick for you. And then when you start to understand the game and you've been there, you know, you've been in those tight situations, you can start slowing the game down, and so the game's not fast for him anymore.
Slowing the game down has allowed Spillane to hit more home runs in the last 2 weeks than he did all of last season. He says picking the right pitches to hit this year has led to more success.
Selection, pitch selection, because majority of last year I thought that I got myself out by swinging at bad pitches, chasing pitches out of the zone, and I feel like really being able to command your zone and knowing what pitch you want to go and get makes things a lot easier.
Spillane was named Division I National Player of the Week by 2 different publications for his performance last week, while also earning a 2nd straight Big Ten Player of the Week honor. In Champaign, I'm Evan Kahn, UI7 News.
That's it for sports.
Thanks, Samantha. That's all we have for you tonight on UI7 News. Thanks for joining us.
For more of our stories, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter or subscribe to our YouTube page. We'll be back next Wednesday with another edition of UI7 News.
Have a good night.